And one of the things I've come out with, with my research is that anything that can take in water has a high chance of also absorbing sound. Now, if, for example, silk cannot retain water, so it ultimately cannot do a good job absorbing sound. But a foam, right, the wall cannot retain water. You just forcefully pour out water from the cup against the wall. It's going to bounce right back, forcefully so. If you tried that same experiment you do on a wall with, pour out that water from the cup, and you notice that not all that water will come back to you.
Hi, and welcome to the Everything Voiceovers podcast. I'm Tcode, an African voiceover talent from Nigeria, and this is my podcast, where I take on voiceover topics from an African perspective. In this episode, my guest is Nigerian voice actor Darnley UCHE. We sit in his home studio to discuss the essentials of setting up a home studio. Sit back and enjoy this episode.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, The African Perspective. It's Tcode here again for another episode of the podcast. Now, I love to do a podcast where I'm in the same space with a person whom I am interviewing or having a podcast with, and today it's that type of podcast, so it's going to be special. It's going to be really, really intimate, and when I say intimate, I mean we can talk things true and true. So today I am again in Lagos, Nigeria, and I am in a home studio. And when I say home studio, I mean home studio, not the typical type of studio that you go to record and you pay some fee and all of that. This is a studio that is set up in a home, in a house. And it only takes someone who is really neck deep into the audio industry to set up a home studio and not somewhere outside of his home. And it helps you to work from home, really. So I am the home studio of someone else, not me. Of course, I own a home studio. I've got with me the delectable. Why do I like to use the word delectable so much? He's a very fine gentleman. I think that's what strikes me about him. And he speaks like one.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's as handsome as he sounds and as he looks.
Why am I blushing like this? Come on.
You heard the voice. That's the voice
Oh my God.
Darnley, the voice mayor, right?
That's right. The voice mayor.
The voice mayor, right? That's really cool. That sounded like something out of the WWE textbooks.
Right? I think that's and funny enough, that's not the first time someone is saying that about the name, but it has come to stay. It has come to stay.
When you care for myself, Tcode.
Yeah, Tcode is cool. Come on, yeah.
No, I think I found Tcode the fine artists, and I'm going to tell you where that came from. Really, a few days ago, I was on an IG Live with the other hosts at the forthcoming Voiceover conference, which is just a few days to today, and my fellow host said, "How did the name Tcode come about?" And I was telling her how back then, many years ago, I used to draw. So I was a fine artist. And she said, fine artist, you're fine and you're an artist. Fine artist. I was like, oh, okay. That's so like...
I get it. I get it.
Pun intended.
Interesting.
Okay. So it's a pleasure to be here, Darnley.
Yeah. Welcome back to Lagos. It's always a good time
to be in Lagos. Yeah. Really. And the last time I was at Kingi's place, to record. And for those who are if you don't know Kingi, you can listen to a few episodes back. He is the convener of the Voiceover conference. And the Voiceover conference is happening this week. So you're probably listening to this after the conference is held.
And if you happen to be listening before you better beat me there, because you'll meet me there.
Darnley's going to be there. I'll be there. I'll be hosting the conference this year. I mean, it's a huge privilege.
That's right.
So let's talk about home studio setup, because that's why we're really here today. I've been wanting to talk about this for quite a while now. Last week, I spoke about voiceover equipment. I spoke about 12 of them. From the computer to the microphone to the headphones to the pop filters to the audio interface. I talked about a lot of them, the studio monitors and all. But it's one thing to have the equipment and know how to piece them together.
That's right.
It's another thing to understand how to set up a space where the equipment can live and work well.
That's right.
And that's why I'm here. You've been able to set up a home studio here. I know you did it recently. I saw the post on Instagram and I was like, this is really cool.
Thank you.
I like how it's fashioned. Aesthetically, it's pleasing. And then when you come into the studio, the acoustics is just on point. So I felt we need to talk about this. And people ask the questions a lot of time. How do I go about setting up my home studio? So I feel like we could actually talk about home studio setup.
Good time.
So before you got here, before this happened, when did you make your first attempt in creating a home studio?
That was it's been a long road. The first attempt was back in 2019. When I decided to go in full time.
Okay.
To go full time in my voiceover career. I started, interestingly, I started sticking my head into the wardrobe because that was the only practical thing I could do back then, and that was the only thing I had at my disposal. I think I still have some pictures of that. Maybe one day I'll put it on social media. So I started off, sticking my head in the wardrobe, and being that I'm someone who perspires a lot, you can already see that experience was never pleasant. So I used to literally have, ice buckets in the freezer, and I'd go take an ice bath and come right back, everywhere sealed up. And I kept doing that. I did that for close to 7 months. And then I relocated. And to that new place, I started again. I went back to the wardrobe before I finally decided to start putting things together, to use one of the rooms. But that experience didn't turn out so well. Some of the panels you see here came from back then. So we moved to another house again, and this time I decided to use the dining area. The dining area it didn't require this much. Like, this panel was there. It didn't require so much. But then when we came over here, it's a totally
fourth place.
Yeah, this is like the fourth place.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different environment, and it requires way more. And the kind of jobs that I want to handle, I don't want distractions whatsoever. I want to be in full control of my space. And so I decided to get this one.
So we're going to talk about these spaces, the peculiarity of these spaces, and how you were able to figure out the right balance of sound in those spaces. But just before we get into that you mentioned 2019 when you decided to do this full time, right? What were you doing before then?
Well, I was doing voiceover. My voiceover career started in 2017, even though I discovered voiceover as far back as 2009.
Wow.
And I was just learning as much as I could. I became a sponge, but I never quite got anything started then until 2017. When I got paid for my first gig, I was like, wow, okay, this is starting to make sense. Let's go. And so I was in between voiceover and trying to get back on radio, in and out of radio. I was in and out of radio. And then I also had a job. At one point, I had a job on the island where I was working in a hospitality organization. But when I resigned, I thought it was perfect. Okay, at some point after that job on the island, I think I still had another job at a TV station where I was their in-house voiceover talent. It was a part-time engagement. So I would go at 9 a.m. and do their voiceovers till about 12 to 1 p.m. And that would be it.
What was that experience like? Doing a voiceover, was it... I'm trying to understand why you need to go somewhere, do voiceovers till like 1 p.m. and then leave. What was this?
So they had their YouTube channel. They have YouTube. This organization has a couple of TV stations. I don't want to mention their name. Interesting.
YouTube, right?
No, they had a standard TV station, but then they also have some of this content that not only goes on their TV stations, but also for their YouTube channels.
Yeah.
And so it was a series, daily sports, daily tech, daily entertainment and whatnot. So I was the voice behind all of those. I would go and I would voice like 5 scripts per day. Yeah. or more per day. So it was an everyday thing.
And was it visual? Was it really TV?
No,
or just voiceover?
It was just a voiceover for that part of the the TV programs, that part of their programming, so to speak.
Paid monthly or?
Yeah, I was paid monthly, but trust me, one of the reasons I don't want to go back to it is because the experience was just not pleasant, and that's why I decided, you know what, I can do this full time, and I'll be in control of what I earn, and that was how. Yeah,
it wasn't easy, but then
it wasn't. Trust me, there were days of at the end of the month, to get that peanut, you'd have to go upstairs and back, upstairs and back, upstairs and back. And at the end of the day, somebody's like, give the poor boy his money. I'm like, who's the poor boy? Like, but
I'm a bit tempted to go into the conversation of how you actually started your voiceover career as a full-timer, because this is something people are really curious about.
Absolutely.
And I think sometime I'm going to do an episode that focuses on people who are doing voiceovers full-time, right? Because it's not really advisable to tell people to just quit their jobs and start doing voiceovers full-time. But then we'll have our stories for those of us that have decided to do this full-time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the studio setup thing. You 2019 decided to do your setup or start doing voiceovers full time, and you were using your wardrobe. There, for the sake of people who are using wardrobes right now, because we're going to look at the different stages till you got to the space.
Yeah.
What was I know you talked about it a little bit, but the challenges of using a wardrobe, what were the things that you realized? People often say, start somewhere, start with your wardrobe, but you knew it wasn't a pleasant experience. So for someone who's trying to maybe I should go and use my wardrobe, what are things to expect from your expertise? What did you notice about the wardrobe?
So from the start, the wardrobe is not actually the ideal place. It's just because that's what maybe that's at the point where a person is starting out. That's probably the only thing that they have, and that's the only ideal spot to use. And so it comes with a lot of disadvantages. One, you'd have a hard time. You stick your microphone into the wardrobe as much as possible. That's what I recommend. But then you'd have the challenge of your script. Oftentimes your phone. Sticking it in there is also not very convenient, and the clothes might be getting in the way, and it's a lot. And then, God help you, if you're gonna have a directed session,
it ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work. So, how are you gonna be in the wardrobe and pull that off? So many pros and cons, and of course the environment behind you. It's not a treated space, so you don't have a very balanced sound.
So I've been following conversations about recording, and I realized that the idea of recording from a wardrobe actually came from something slightly different.
Okay.
And the idea was people would recommend, especially voiceover experts in the US or in the UK, they'll tell you can record in your closet.
Yeah, in the closet. Most houses don't have closets in this part of the world.
That's the thing. So a lot of Nigerians or Africans may not know that it's a big difference.
That's right.
Some people don't understand the difference between wardrobe and a closet.
That's right.
So they stick in their head in the wardrobe and it doesn't work. Right? Even I started doing right about 2019 as well.
Interestingly. That's interesting.
It was a crazy experience, man. I stuck my head into it. And then I was using a Shure SM58.
Come on.
You have
what are you? Yes.
Yeah,
it's somewhere in the space.
This is the 80-20-20. I use the 80-20 chronograph. So it's like we've gone through some very I also did radio. Yeah. So I'll stick my head in there, and I realized that my sound was sounding my voice was sounding very deep, like boom.
Exactly. Too boomy, and
exactly.
It's just not very pleasant.
I knew early enough that this wasn't going to work, and then I started doing more research, and clothes were coming recommended, but those will kind of absorb the sound, because in acoustic treatment, two things really are important. One is being able to have the proper sound in the room.
Yeah.
And then the other is being able to, as much as you can, ensure that noise doesn't
filter in.
Exactly. From outside the room.
And I think that's why the wardrobe worked for me, because I was using a dynamic microphone. Because if it was a condenser microphone,
and it's got the things everywhere,
that would have been an impossicante.
The ruffle of the clothes and everything. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
And now this is, I mean, you have to understand that both of us aren't technicians basically in this, but we're people, we've tried things. We've done it ourselves a couple of times till we got to where we are. So we're just sharing our experiences, not exactly as booth experts, as it were.
But isn't that what we do as voiceover talents? We wear many hats.
You have to learn.
Yeah, you have to learn different things surrounding the business. Yeah, all sorts of things.
Content creator, a lot of things like that. So let's stick to the conversation now. We're still talking about home studio setup. You moved from a wardrobe to, was it a dining or something?
Yeah, and then I had to convert my dining area. That was after the wardrobe. I tried to convert one of our rooms. That was my first attempt at using a room, and then I did that. Unfortunately, there was this very heavy generator belonging to my landlady then. It made recording experiences a nightmare. But then that experience soon changed, and we went upstairs, and I saw that the wardrobe was, I didn't want too much space back then, so I saw the dining area. I saw the dining area to be an ideal space, and I could use some of the panels that I currently have, and they just sufficed. And just like you mentioned backstage, using a blanket, that pretty much worked for me too. So I used it to just block out a substantial part of the space, and it worked.
So let me get it right. You were staying downstairs, I guess.
I was staying downstairs, and at some point
the generator was an issue.
Yeah.
You had a room that you wanted to use.
Yes.
And then you had to move upstairs after a while. So the downstairs, let me understand what you did to it. Did you created panels, right?
Yes.
What was that process like? Did you buy them? Did you make them yourself? And what year was this?
This was 2020/2021.
Okay.
Yeah. And as for the panels, I still have some of them. The panels you see here, I made 50% of them because I'm a DIY person. Yeah, I love DIY. It's what I do. Yeah, it's what I do when I'm not recording voiceovers. Okay, not all the time.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm even getting more and more busy. It's becoming more difficult to do it. So I do some DIYs, and then I created some of those panels thanks to. It took a lot of research, reason being that to get one of these panels in Nigeria, it literally costs an arm and a leg compared to if you were getting it out there.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to think about importation. Big deal.
Yeah. So we're not talking about this panel right behind.
No, not this one. I couldn't make this one.
We're talking about this.
Yeah. And that.
And that. So for those that are just listening audio-wise, I'm sorry, you might have to check the video on YouTube or Instagram. But these panels, right, this is not rock wool.
No, not rock wool.
Just like foam.
Yeah, and foam. Not all of them. Some are foam, and some have other recyclable materials. Like this, you see the ones that are flat?
Yeah.
I built those ones with some recycled materials, and
then you cover it with
this fabric.
Yeah. And this is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I the reason why I'm taking my time to ask this question is because let's be very honest with ourselves. We're in Africa, we're in Nigeria. That's not to say that we don't do quality things.
That's right.
Not the point. The point is that a lot of us in this industry, the industry is still quite young.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of young people, and getting resources can be a lot, especially in a stage in your career where you're still struggling to even get recognized, get clients.
That's right.
So the reality of the average voiceover artist or upcoming is that they would love to use whatever they can to get with
in their environment.
Exactly. So it's good that we talk about our own struggles as well.
Yes.
Trying to put things together. And I'm going to talk, maybe towards the end of this, we're going to talk about the differences between recording in a bungalow or having your home studio set up in a bungalow and a home studio set up in the house where there are different floors and you're not exactly on the top floor.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that later. So you had panels, still you didn't get to what you wanted exactly because the noise coming from outside.
Yes.
But the panels doing enough?
Yeah, they did help a lot. They did help quite a lot. One thing was I didn't have enough. Yeah. And I didn't have enough, but the ones I did have, they worked just fine.
Just fine.
So when I went upstairs and we saw that dining area, you know, the number of panels I had pretty much influenced the choice of space. And so I felt that those panels would be just enough for the space, and that's why we decided.
The dining area was smaller.
Yes, it was smaller, less than half the size of the room downstairs.
I'm going to tell you, my present home studio is my dining area.
Interestingly.
Well, it's a total demarcation. So,
okay.
I mean, I covered that place entirely. So it looks like a room, but it's, you know, small. And now, you know, before we started recording, I was telling you about the challenges of using a smaller area for a home studio. This place, I really don't know the dimension of this room.
I can't remember. Someone did give me
I believe it'll be like 10 feet by 10, but maybe.
Somewhere around 12 there, but I can't remember the whole.
Possibly, yeah. Mine is about 6 by 6.
Okay.
And the smaller it was, I think that also had its own challenge because now in this space, for instance, I can count, you know, the panels that you have on the walls. Not every inch or every part of the wall is covered.
That's right.
But you have enough panels, big enough, small enough, you know, just strategically positioned in the room,
right.
And then you speak and they're doing their job.
That's right.
But when you have a smaller space, right, if your panels are scanty or you're not able to cover the parts of the walls, there are chances that you will get those feedback that you don't want.
That's right.
The echo.
That's right.
So in my case, I demarcated, and the part that was the wall that was demarcated was well padded, like entirely padded. And then right opposite, just like you're covering a window here with a very huge panel or, you know, wall of padded wall, right? I did the same. So if you look at my back, it's a padded wall. The front of me was also a very padded, huge, rectangular panel. And then one side entirely curtain. Two curtains, right?
I had that. Okay, I actually had 2 curtained areas.
Yeah.
One was like the wall, more like what I'm using now. I had like walls. I had lots of foams, just bare foams, and then I used the curtain to shield them. Yeah. And people would look at it, they'd be like, "Whoa, you look like someone. Where are you? You look like you're in Dubai." I'm like,
yeah, I think I should be using the curtain as a background now.
And then they're like, I'm in my studio.
Yeah.
And then I also had that very thick blanket that also did serve as a partitioning for the open side. Yeah.
So now where I'm driving at is that I realized that even with all of those enforcements that I had, I wasn't getting the sound I wanted. You know why? Because the fourth side of the room, of the studio, wasn't covered at all. So the wall was too close. And you know, the thing about sound is that it's waves, sound
That's right.
waves.
Yes.
So it's going to find somewhere to meet and bounce back.
I say it like water.
Yeah.
I say it's like water. When you just pour it out vehemently from a cup, it's going to bounce right back, splash right back.
Exactly. So that wall needed to be covered. Now, in this case, I'm sitting here. The wall is some feet away from my voice. So before it gets to the wall, there's a bit of diffusion that has taken place. And while it's diffusing, it's hitting different panels.
Right.
But in the other space that was quite smaller, even if it's hit a panel here, the wall is too close to the mouth, to the voice where it's coming from.
I get.
So if it's smaller, you need to really treat the wall more.
That's right. That's right.
Because sometimes I see some studios, not so like, if you enter my studio, every part of the wall is covered. By the right, it's a curtain. By the left, it's the acoustic panels. By the back, it's the padded walls and the front. So every part is covered. But in this case, you don't need to cover every inch of the wall because it's more, it's bigger, it's spacious. There's more room for the wave to diffuse, and the panels will take care of it. Something I learned from.
We learn every day. I'm also learning, the booth junkie, one guy that I follow, and I recommend that for
that dude. Everyone check out the booth junkie.
Check him out, really. And there's something I've even learned, that the more you space this thing from the wall, the better acoustics you get, the better sound you get. So we learn every day. I learned not to cover the whole place. When I was doing my research 2 years ago, I learned that in covering the whole place, you could end up, in the end, over-treating the space. But this over-treated space is way better than poorly treated space. It's better to have an overly treated space than to have a poorly treated space. And so I learned that if you over-treat, you might be, in the end, like, what's the best way to describe it? Like, I like kind of like suppressing the
natural vibrance.
Yes, that's it. The vibrations.
I get you. I get you. And I do agree with you, really. But one of the things I've also found out in the case of home studio setup and treatment is that different studios require maybe a unique approach.
True.
Because the way a studio sounds, or the way a room sounds, if we're standing here, the sound we're going to get is different from if we enter into the parlor.
That's right.
Or we get into somewhere else, a sitting room or a dining space and all of that. So
that's right.
You need to listen, you need to really train your ears. And how do you do that is you need to understand what a proper studio should sound like.
Yes.
And then when you are in a space where it's not well treated, you can begin to, there's a lot of
backtrack.
There's a lot of vibration or echo here or reverb here. I need to pad this and this and this so it works. Now, speaking about the uniqueness of different spaces, right? I said something the other time when I said we're going to talk about bungalow. And do you want to talk about that?
Okay. So really, the interesting thing, when I came to inspect this space, I'd seen the POP at the sitting room, but I couldn't inspect the space because there were some properties here. Ironically, for that reason, I couldn't see the space. So I assumed that there's POP in the other room and the sitting room, so I assumed that it would be everywhere. I know that does add to some, to soundproofing. But then, if you are living in a bungalow versus living in a
different floor,
in a story building, it's advantageous if you're not living at the very top. I feel so, because you'd have to do less in terms of soundproofing the roofing area, because the ceiling, because you'd have to do way less and you'd get very good sound. And you don't have to worry about when it's raining, because if you block out the window, if you do a good job, soundproofing the windows in any case, then you may not have a problem with the rain. But if you're living in a bungalow, for goodness sake, you'd have to wait. And then you'd have to wait till the downpouring is over.
So just to add to what he's saying, right? Unfortunately, if you stay in a bungalow, the ceiling and the roof, the distance between them is usually small.
True.
Or short. And when it rains, you can't really do so much to control that. I don't know how much you want to pad. Probably have to enter into the ceiling to add some paddings, and I don't think that would
not ideal.
Exactly.
Or you build a room in a room, which is another
that's another thing that you can do, but that's a lot of
cost intensive.
Speaking about costs, let's talk about the things that you need in your home studio. We've spoken about panels, right? Aside from the panels and aside from the equipment, what other things do you need to pay attention to when you're putting together your home studio that would cost you maybe not exactly so much, but at least it's necessary to have?
It's necessary to have a rug, and of course the door is also important. If you don't have a padded door, like I have, my door is padded. Maybe you see the video or you see a picture of it. My door is padded. If you don't have a padded door, what I've been doing is putting blankets over the door and try to shut it. I think that helps to an extent. So that's trying to keep it low. So try to use a blanket on the door. So, and then you need, if you have cushions extra cushions that you can bring into that space for the main time, bring them in, because the more stuff you have in the room, the better acoustics. But make sure it's not something that sound will ricochet off of. Even if it's your water bottle, you don't go get a stainless steel water bottle. Get something that's plastic, something that sound will not just bounce off of. All of those, keeping it low.
The table as well.
Yeah, you need a table. And it's also important to put something over the table. In my case, I'm still looking for that ideal stuff. Like I said, this space is 90% done. Still have a few extra touch-ups I need to do.
Should we talk about the table?
Okay.
Because it's not any type of table.
That's right.
Table. I've observed for studios, you tend to create a table that, now this for instance has a section for your keyboard. Then the normal flat surface, and then behind that there's another elevation for maybe
the studio monitors. Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? And where, if people want to do that kind of design, let's just talk about it. Right.
So ideally, this is based on preference for me, but because I've also seen a couple of studios where they didn't necessarily have this kind of, but for most studios really that I've been to, I think they have this kind of setup. But I've also seen some studios where they don't have this kind of table, and they just have a flat table. But that's for keeping things on a low budget. That's if you want to keep things on a low. Get a flat table when you don't have any. But then when you start bringing the studio monitors, you'd need to have a place to mount those monitors, and that's where having this elevated spot on the table comes in really handy. So if you have this, you have an elevate. It's always good to have the studio monitors, at a level where it's equivalent to your ears. And so that's where this thing really comes in handy. And for the drawer, I find this to be very convenient in terms of controlling my keyboard and not having to work directly on the computer. So
especially if you're using a laptop.
Yes, if you're, I kind of prefer using a laptop, because for studios, because it gives you some kind of flexibility. There are some times I just in my previous setups, there have been times I just felt like, okay, I don't want to work in this space. I just take it to another space, and I have my headphone, and I can still get things done.
So that's cool. I see that you have a boom arm extended
from the table.
Mic stand, and you also have the normal, adjustable mic stand, the long one. From your experience, which do you prefer using?
I started off with this one, the mic stand, but then for flexibility, I just like that extra flexibility, because sometimes you want to sit, especially when you're doing a long form narration. It gets to a point where you're not, I prefer to stand when I'm doing my performances, but it gets to a point where you just cannot stand anymore and you want to sit down. So you don't want to start doing all that plenty of work, adjusting the microphone. It just, I just pull it to where I'm at, the mic follows, and problem solved.
It's really cool. And then they did get different types of adjustable
absolutely,
but it's really cool.
Thank you.
You also have a manuscript stand. How does that really help? Do you prefer using your manuscript stand, or you prefer reading directly on your laptop and with your boom amp you're recording?
I prefer to use this because Okay, gone are the days. Now, by the way, here's one thing to chip in. If you want to start setting up your home studio today, I'd recommend that the kind of computer you're going for, stick to SSD, one that has SSD storage against the HDD storage for VoiceOver. There's a reason for that. Here's why. I'll tell you. You don't want that noise, because after you've treated the space, and then the only noise you can hear in that space is from your computer, it gets really frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons, but not the only reason for this choice, because I find more flexibility. VoiceOver, it's voice acting, right? So we do the acting. People don't see other things we do with our body and our faces, our hands, when we have to jump and all that stuff. Nobody sees that. They just hear it from the voice, all of that. But all of these things add up to the beauty of, what we do. And so I wanted to be very free to do all of that, to be as expressive as can be. And a lot of times I found that my phone was getting in the way. Holding my phone was getting in the way. And for long form narrations, it not only gets in the way, it becomes painful. Yeah, the arms, you start to feel that pain on your arms. So I thought it necessary to get this and a tablet, because you have a wider view and it's just more convenient,
especially if you're the type that wants to record while standing.
Exactly.
Stand
exactly
would really help.
True.
Interesting. Let's talk about the lights. I think you have different light choices. I'm very curious because I don't know when next I'll be in the studio, so I have to ask enough questions.
No problem.
So why do you have different lights?
This is the part where...
Does it really help if your voiceover English?
Okay, this is the one that I think, not entirely, but somehow it does help. This one, it kind of helps set the RGB light kind of helps set the mood. Like you could just put it on red, to just...
Like danger.
Yeah, like danger.
Voice.
You just use it, it just kind of helps set the mood a bit, So I turn off everything else and then it's dimmed, and then I have that. It does help in some way, but then the rest of the light, that's where that part, the content creator hats that we wear as voiceover talents, this is where this other lights come into play, and so we use it to create content. Unfortunately, it's also a bit difficult to create content and do the work, but we keep trying. We keep
learning to how to be content creators. Something I was going to say was, I also noticed that you have a Samsung notepad.
Yeah.
And that's placed strategically on your manuscript. I noticed a lot of things, right?
So
that's really helping, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it comes back to, that freeing up your hands and having a very wide view as much as possible. So for audiobooks, long form narrations, I like to annotate, I can't conveniently do that if I were to be looking into my computer, reading the script from my computer. So this is where a tab comes, and it could be for any kind of script. Matter of fact, people do script marking. You want to circle that one word, maybe you want to emphasize or whatever you want to do with the word. And this is where I find the tablet to really come in handy, and it works. So I went for something that allows me to annotate as opposed to just about any kind of tab. And it doesn't have to be an expensive one. Hey, remember, we're setting up a home studio on a low budget.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to get a tab very soon. But if you're wondering why we're talking tabs, we're talking manuscript stand, by now it should be obvious to you that Darnley does a lot of audiobook recordings and narrations. It's sort of like it's your forte, right? You love reading.
Yeah, I kind of love long form narration. I'm versatile. I can do the commercials. Yeah, I love the commercials a lot. But then, the long form narration is maybe because I started off, like back to the YouTube, the TV station that I used to work for, all long form narrations, nothing under 2,000 words, and so I started building my muscle. At some point,
15-minute long.
Yeah, at some point in my voiceover career, I was voicing for 6 YouTube channels, and all of that, none of those were below 1,200 words. So you had 1,200 to 3,000. all of that was building my muscles.
Yeah, it builds your stamina.
Yeah.
Especially now for me, right? I don't know about you, but I was also editing them myself.
I was too, and
then kind of like now it's more like muscle memory the way I edit. Like I'm just hitting the keyboard and it's very fast. So YouTube narrations.
Yeah.
Shout out to YouTube narrations for
absolutely.
Yeah. So we've spoken about lights. We're going to talk about something else.
Okay.
And this are like the stuff in your studio that make noise, but you just need to have them so that you can be more comfortable. So if you want to have ventilation, the other day I saw, like a few days ago, Jamaldeen posted something about how to ensure there is ventilation. Like it was just a question from him, curiously saying, how do you guys ventilate your
studio space?
Right. Interestingly, you've got an L&G air conditioner. Like,
oh my God,
man!
Don't say it too loud.
So I've had people say something like, "Get yourself an air conditioner now. Do you want to kill yourself?" And that's gonna work. It's gonna, but they don't understand the cons that come with that. So from someone, I don't know about your former studio if you were using a ceiling fan or a standing fan, but now for someone who has experienced what an air condition can do in this type of studio, about 10 to 12 feet by 10 to 12 feet thereabout, what would you say about using an AC?
It comes at a cost. The cost is the cost of buying one.
Yeah.
Anyway, it depends on the one you're going for.
Yeah.
But after that, I think it's beauty. You can just cool off. I for one, I perspire a lot. Yeah, I said that before. So you want to cool off the space. What I typically do, I cool off the space for like 40 minutes to an hour, and then I can work for sometimes, I don't know, it could take me for as long as even 2 hours in some cases. But when I didn't have this, it was back to the days of ice baths, ice buckets in the freezer. I'd go and pouring on myself, and in the next 5 minutes or so, I'm back to where I was, and I'm like, what's going on here? A lot of people don't realize that some of us voiceover people, we do what we do on we do it bare chested. We have to take off our clothes and do they don't know all the work.
Let out the cat on the bag.
So they don't know all the work that goes into this whole thing of ours. It's a lot. It's not just to read. I had to say it that way so you get the message better, right?
I mean, the truth is, if you look at it, if you think about it, having a rug or, having your foam chairs, having the panels, before and then you know where that air can come into the studio, it's definitely going to be hot.
Everywhere is going to be, it's an oven, literally.
Literally. My studio, by now, I would have been sweating because, right now we had to put off the AC and all of that. If it were my studio, because the space is smaller. So I'm just putting these little details out there. So depending on the space that you want to get, the smaller it is, the more hot is going to become quickly, right? So we're not exactly sweating right now, but we're beginning to feel that heat. So interesting. And then one more thing I wanted to talk about. So in my studio, right now, here's the thing.
Okay.
And now I'm going to be very vulnerable. I'm gonna like expose myself to you guys.
Isn't that the beauty of life?
I remember last year, I was in Lagos for some months, and I was always going to the Voiceover workshop. In fact, it was as if I was interning there. So what I was doing when I go to the Voiceover workshop, and I had recordings to do, because we had to put off the AC and all of that, I used to sweat a lot. So, and now the natural thing about sweating as humans is that it comes with, if you're there for so long and you just clean your sweat, is there a better way of putting this? The natural smell begins to, circulate, right? And sometimes it's not so pleasant.
Yeah, the whole place gets stuffy too quickly.
Now, I told you guys this story. I told you guys this truth because I want you to know that if you're planning to get a home studio, something to kind of condition the air in terms of how it smells.
Right.
It's good to have them.
Yeah, air fresheners and all that. I have some of those around too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just buy one, hang it. In fact, I started with the ones that you just put somewhere and it's just doing its own job. It's not. Then I bought recently the one that every
10 to 15 minutes,
it just
lets out a spray. Yeah.
Cool. If you're going to buy that type, you have to ensure that if you have a recording session,
turn it off.
You don't want to be in a directed session and I remember the last directed session I was. Thank God I was still speaking to the client who had not started recording when it didn't. I just had to look for a way to, get it up. Like,
what's that?
And that sound can be really funny because
absolutely. Yeah, like did you let out a fart?
So you want to have that. Let me talk about powering your home studio. That's a very interesting.
Oh my God!
Right?
In Nigeria,
and it can be a lot of challenge.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you my own story, and I'm working towards taking care of that. Absolutely. In Nigeria, as it is, right? We don't have stable 24/7 electricity 24/7. So a lot of us, when there's no electricity supply, we then have to use our generators to generate electricity. And of course, the generators make sound
a lot.
So from there, I was using my generator, but it wasn't good enough because it was always affecting my recording. So what I did was I would power my generator. I'll use my generator to power my home studio, and my laptop will charge. And after it's charged and full, I'll put off my generator, I'll record. And when the battery is, going very low, I put on my generator again. I take that time to produce, do some editing, that circle, right? After a while, I had to extend my generator far away from my space just to ensure that the noise is limited a little bit. Now the truth is, challenges that comes with that's why I said the other time that the space you're recording in, there's a unique challenge for every.
That's right.
The fact that my generator is far away from where I stay doesn't mean that my neighbor is not going to want to
turn on their own, maybe a heavier one, maybe twice as heavy as yours.
In fact, my neighbor his generator is twice as heavy as mine, and I'm just very fortunate that he's not the type that likes noise as well. So except if it's really, really important, he's not going to put on his generator. So now I'm working towards the solar part.
Oh my goodness. I've also gone all those ways, powering my laptop. But you see, eventually, back to, I'd like to backtrack a bit to come on here. When the space starts to get really hot and you're all sweaty, you lose comfort. It's very discomforting, and that could ultimately affect your performance in most cases.
Yeah.
That could ultimately affect your performance, especially if you're doing long form narrations. But if it's a commercial, a couple of times you'd have to rough it, like the ice bath thing. I said it could work. Just go take an ice bath. 5 minutes, you're done with the commercial. You force it, rush it, and you're done. But long form narrations, you can't. Or directed session. But long form narration, you can't. That will not really work. It's going to be extra stressful, and so that's where. And that makes an air conditioner a must, and other tools that you may be using in your studio. If you're using a mixer and all that stuff, you need extra power for all that stuff. And so I I'd been on and off. There's been times when NEPA, and this is a challenge for pretty much I think this is a challenge for pretty much every content creator, not just in voiceover, but let's be more specific to voiceover.
Yeah.
So in this case, we've had power outages, and in some cases, it was just our house. Yeah, like maybe something goes on. It's a long story. I don't even want to delve into it. We had this real challenges like just our house, and it'd take months or weeks to resolve issues with NEPA, and then you and your neighbors be running generators. So you can't. He's also your neighbor
affected.
Yeah. So everybody's affected.
Yeah.
Your neighbor can't turn off the gen all the time for you to get your work done, even though you may charge up a few things or you keep your generator at a distance. Y'all cannot always. So eventually this became very necessary. It's a heavy investment, but it's well worth it. It's good to come to a place where you are in control of your power situation. But ultimately, your play determines the capacity of your studio. If you're not doing full time like us, you may not. All of this setup may be too much for you. Yeah. True. If you're not doing, if you're not in it for the long haul like Tcode and myself, so this may be too much. But your play determines your setup.
It's interesting how we didn't talk about Rockwool. Just struck me right now. When we're talking about the panels, and you did a lot of panels yourself, right?
Yeah.
Do we want to be honest about the reality of getting a Rockwool? How it could be expensive.
Darn too expensive in this part of the world.
Yeah.
You could literally check online and you see a couple of dollars as the price tag, but when you come down to Nigeria, that's more like almost triple or four times the amount that you're seeing, and then it's very and then it's not practical because out there in that part of the world, come on, they're talking thousands of dollars for voiceover gigs, and over here in Nigeria, people are having a hard time giving you 50,000 naira for the same delivery, and so it just doesn't add up. Like, how am I going to be paying more to get this things to set up my space, and I'm not going to be getting as much as they're getting over there, and they're buying these things for less. So this is all part of it. It just adds up to the challenges that we face as voiceover talents on the space in this part of the world. And so Rockwools, though ideal, but quite expensive if you are starting out. And so I didn't see it to be a viable option. That's the more reason I started doing some research. And one of the things I've come out with, with my research is that anything that can take in water, has a high chance of also absorbing sound. Now, if for example, let's say for example, silk cannot hold water, cannot retain water, so it ultimately cannot do a good job absorbing sound. But a foam, let's put a foam and a wall, right? The wall cannot retain water. You just forcefully pour out water from the cup against the wall, it's going to bounce right back, forcefully so. But if you do that same thing on a foam that can, retain water, not all kind of foams. I also got to learn that not all kind of foams would do a great job. So if you tried that same experiment you do on a wall with, pour out that water from the cup, and you notice that not all that water will come back to you. So what happened? That water, the foam retained some of the water, held back some of it, and that's kind of like what I came out with my research. This may not be accurate, but so far my experiment, this is what I found out to be the case.
To a large extent, that's true. I mean, the rug is going to absorb water.
Yes,
and all of this. I feel like we've had a very interesting conversation. What else do you think we've not touched on that you think is important for us to address when talking about home studio setup?
So, okay.
There's something I was going to talk about, but then go on.
Okay. So, in this whole home studio setup, remember, the idea is not necessarily that for the person who may just be starting out, the idea is not necessarily to have a very nice space for show off. No. What we're aiming for is a dead space.
Right.
quiet space. That's what we call a treated space. So just to break it down in a more simplified way, you're looking for a dead space. A place that's quiet enough. You're not getting echoes and you're not getting too much of external noise coming into your space. So it's you and your microphone, so you can have that chit chat.
You know, the funny, this talk is absolutely relative, because what I'm about to talk about is about the financing or the financial part of it. And what it'll cost you, it will be different from what it will cost someone else.
That's right.
So there are industrial acoustic panels, right? Factory made. And that will cost you more
A lot
than creating acoustic panels that you find a carpenter to do for you, or you do it yourself, like Darnley did. And this behind us, this huge padded panel that covers the window or the door, those are also something that you have to get a carpenter to do.
That's right.
Now, the thing about finance again is, if I ask how much exactly it costs you right now, this is 2023, probably next year is a different cost.
True.
So, whatever we're going to say right now might just be very temporal, right? But just gives us an idea. For me, I got the acoustic panel, which is factory made. And I got that, it ranges, the price ranges between 6,000, 7,000, and it's about just 2 by 2 feet. So imagine you're if you're going to cover one of these walls, you're going to spend, you're going to be buying at least from, say, 20, you're going to be buying like 26 to 30 of that.
Yeah.
And if you want to,
like 2 to 3 dozens.
Yeah. And multiply that by 6,000, 7,000. You're spending already about close to 200k, if not more.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
But if you take 200,000 naira and you give a carpenter to create acoustic panels for you, I mean, it's going to create a lot of that.
Absolutely.
So
then that's where. Okay, I don't know if you finished.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so that's where the research paid off.
Exactly.
You know, doing a lot of research, I came up with answers and I knew what to expect. So I did a lot of project managing here. You know, so telling them what I want specifically. And another thing, dealing with artisans can be quite challenging.
Sure.
You tell them, this is what I want you to come up with, but then they have another plan, another idea. They have another way that they want to nail things and mess up the whole space. And so you know, project management played out here too. So while we saved a lot of cost, my wife and I, on the ones we did the DIY, we saved a lot of cost. But then when time could no longer permit, and also when the things we required were more advanced, like this one, we couldn't DIY this one, and well, we couldn't the ones we knew the ones we could DIY and the ones we couldn't DIY, and so it was time to bring in the artisan. But like you said, knowing what you want is a first good start. You have knowing what you want. It starts with knowing what you want and how you are going to achieve it. Because if you bring that 200,000 naira, you'd achieve so much than if you were going. Like the last time I tried to look for one of this kind of panels, just one, I think I was seeing 47,000 for just one.
Not even Rockwool.
Not Rockwool. So 47,000, and then for like a pair of Rockwools, I think somewhere on the island, I think it was it 75,000 or 78,000?
Yeah.
Excluding delivery cost. Yeah, all of this, even that 47,000, I think it was also excluding delivery cost. And of course, you know, Lagos, if you have to deliver something, and then those kind of things could easily become 5,000-10,000 naira.
Yeah.
So the cost just starts to add up.
Yeah. So well said, man. You need to know what you want, do your research, know how much it's going to cost you. If you can afford it, go for it. If you cannot afford it, you know, manage your cost and all of that.
Also, being, you know, negotiation skills, very important, because anybody, I can't tell you the number of times I had to try different people. I had to be sure that I clearly communicated this thing to them. But it was another thing. Showing them samples. Go to Pinterest. It's a very good resource place to find. So show them what I want. And another thing is they give you the price, and then you'd have to know, is it worth that amount? If it's not, you'd have to do some negotiating. And I did a lot of that. There was for one of those jobs, I did this in batches. I did this in like 3 batches. And so for one of them, the person who built this table, for example, is different from the person who did this thing. So when this person says, okay, I'm gonna give you do this project for you at 120,000, and I'll go find somebody else, and that person does it for like 35,000 naira less. Wow, that's negotiation. And so very important.
I mean, who's a voiceover artist without
negotiating skills? Exactly. So we wear a lot of hats.
Especially for us Nigerians, we don't have the privilege of having agents.
That's right.
Like they have in the US. So I guess there are agents in the US. But if you want to come to Nigeria, it's a different market, so you need to understand the whole thing here. But we learn to negotiate and do a lot of those things. You mentioned table the other time, and this is the last point we've been talking about. I noticed how nice having this type of table that has partitions makes your workspace look. And specifically, I'm talking about the wiring, because truth is, with a very flat table, you're gonna have wires
all around the place.
And I know that because that was my setup.
Okay.
Right. So one of the things that we do to help that is this partition type of thing. So some wires can go through the places. There's some kind of table that will just have a small hole.
Yes.
So you can put your wires through. Because it's really important before you step and drag a wire and then you spoil something, or your mic or your audio interface or the cable is broken. It's really important for us to highlight that. There's something I was going to mention. Recently I had to change my keyboard and my mouse because I wanted as less wires as possible.
Cool.
And I went for what's it called now?
The wireless
mouse
keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, I've been enjoying it. It's fantastic. So it
helps. I always tell, even during those that I have coached, I always tell them, you want to go for things like this that don't allow you to move too much wires around. Even your microphone, you need to find one space. Find one spot for a mic. You don't need to be moving, especially for condenser microphones. They're fragile. You don't want to keep moving them anyhow. Find one spot for it where you get that sweet, pleasant sound. Leave it there. Don't keep moving wires and cords around, so you don't also end up spending money and buying them over and over again. So it's ideal to have them wireless, but in this case, my keyboard is it's not the wireless one, but I found a way to hide it.
Your table,
so it doesn't ever come. I don't ever come in contact with it.
Brilliant.
I just slide it in, slide it out, and everything works fine.
We've spoken about almost everything. Of course, I can only see like a dustbin.
Waste. It's my workspace, so.
I mean, this is beautiful. We have a gear.
Thank you.
I mean, he has cushions. He has bootstrap panels.
Oh my goodness.
This is beautiful. I'm just trying to give you guys as much information as possible.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you so much, Darnley. You've really opened us to your home space.
Thank you.
Home studio, and we've learned a lot from you.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to go back to my home studio and sit down with my home studio, like, okay, you need to upgrade this, you need to work on this, you need to work on that. I'm working on getting myself a solar panel, so
awesome.
I don't have to worry about my generator anymore.
Awesome.
And pay for bills like that.
Awesome.
I think we're really good. Just for summary sake, what are like the most important things to pay attention to?
So you have to know that as a voiceover talent starting up in this space or any space in the world, anywhere in the world, but I'm speaking more to people here in Nigeria who I can relate more easily, with them. So it's a gradual process. Yeah. Like I said, first things first, your journey, your play determines your setup. When I say your play, it's about, are you in this for the long haul? Is it just a side hustle? If it's just a side hustle, you might as well just cope, get by with let's say a mic shield, maybe.
Yeah.
So I've used all of those, and I have my experience, my personal experiences with all of them for another time, another day. So your play determines your setup, and you'd have to know that even if you're going in full time, it's a gradual process. So don't start off from day one thinking that, hey, I'm gonna have my home studio, and it's a gradual process. It's a gradual process, and your business can, voiceover is an interesting place, right?
Yeah.
You pay for a training, but at the end of the day, as you progress, you realize that what you paid for training was peanut, and your business starts to pay for things like this. It's a very interesting place to be.
There's a lot of money. I just realized that we've spoken about home studio a lot. We didn't really talk about your career. And that's going to take us in all that. Let's just, for the sake of people that don't know who Darnley is, and we've known each other since 2020, I guess, or 2021?
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah.
The Voiceover
conference. Was it the Voiceover conference? It was before the Voiceover conference.
In Africa on Clubhouse.
That's right. You're right.
Shout out to Reverend Maya, founder of Voice Acting Africa on Clubhouse and on Telegram. So
right.
So tell, for people who are just meeting you, what do you? You're of course a voiceover artist, but like your skill sets and everything. What kind of clients you worked for?
It's a lot to unbox. So I'm Darnley UCHE, and stage that people. Okay, let's do it again.
I'm not. Okay. Interesting.
All right, people. My name is Darnley UCHE, and I also go by the name The Voice Mayor. Like he said, from the very start, it's like a name that came from the WWE, but I'm in voiceover. And we also work with people, we also work with the WWEs for voiceover services. And the beauty of what we do is that it's applicable to any industry. We can work for any industry. And so I'm a voiceover talent. I'm a full-time voiceover talent working for close to a decade now. And I've worked with a lot of clients in and outside of Nigeria, in and outside of Africa. I've worked with, should I start mentioning them?
Yeah, I mean, free.
So I've done something for MTN. I've worked with Bayes University. I've done voiceovers for, tons of brands. Trying to recall. I've done something for Star Times. I've done for, the names are there. Okay, you know what? Just put that in my notes. Yeah, my website will be out pretty soon. I'm launching my website in a couple of weeks, and you can go there and learn so much more about me. I also had a stint on radio before I came on here. You might learn a little more about that from my website.
Superstar, man. It's got it.
You are the superstar.
One day we're going to sit down and talk about accents and all.
Okay.
Because I know you don't use the normal, like, typical Nigerian accent, and some people, they have something about it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about it because in a nutshell, right, if you're able to use an accent well,
that's right.
Please, feel free.
Yeah.
So the problem is not the accent. The problem is your proficiency in the accent.
That's right.
Some people don't know how to use a particular accent well, and they're in between. They're neither here nor there, and it's chaotic. So we're going to talk about that some other time, because you're one of those not so many African or Nigerian talents that do well in other accents.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you're hiring a voice talent that is good in narrations, especially audiobooks and commercials and all those many stuff like that, Darnley is the guy. I'm going to put your contact details in the show notes.
Gracias.
And Yeah, I'm sure you're on any of those pay-to-play sites. Which one?
Yeah, I'm on voices.com.
Voices.
I'm on, I think I'm also on Voice 123.
Okay.
Quite a number of them.
Okay.
A number of those platforms.
All right, guys. So this is it for this episode of the Voice. No, I was supposed to say the Voiceover Conference.
The Voiceover Conference just a couple days away.
Yeah, hours actually.
Yeah, hours away. That's right.
They're going to start tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
We're starting on Saturday.
Yeah.
So anyways, guys, this is where we draw the curtain on this episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, African Perspective. I'm Tcode. I need a nickname, guys, so get me one, because
stick with like, Tcode, man.
No, yeah, okay. It's not a nickname per se. You're like the voice mayor. I need something, because for the past few months I've been going from places to places, interviewing people. Like I'm a sojourner. Tomorrow I may go to South Africa to go find Chilulemba. Yeah. Or travel.
I look forward to that.
I really look forward to that. So guys, there's a community for the voiceover, for the Everything Voiceovers podcast that we're trying to build. So that link will also be available in the show notes. You can join our Telegram platform, and it'd be nice to have you there. Enjoy this podcast. Leave your comments, share with your friends, and let them understand how best to set up their home studio. It's been an interesting episode. So now we're going to get into, he's owing me a tiger nut because I'm in his home and he's going to give me something to drink, This is beautiful. When you work from home, it's beautiful for your
Oh my goodness.
So guys, that's it for today. Catch you next time. Till then, keep voicing and keep getting better. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell someone about it. Follow the podcast on Everything VOs on all social media platforms. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.